show where we talk to our jocks that are going to give us practical advice as to how we can use clarity in our personal relationships. So again, we're joined with Brooke Malone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey there, of course. Happy to be here.
So as we're talking about clarity, right, the ability to see clearly, when it comes to our relationships, what does it mean to see a relationship clearly?
Yeah, so when it comes to clarity in relationships, I really think it ties back to purpose. So what we touched on in a previous episode was knowing the why. And once you understand your why, that outlines a lot of clarity for you because you'll know how you want certain people to move in your life, how you want to move with them around, when you want to engage with them. So when it comes to clarity and relationships, that's a big deal and important because you don't want to waste your time. Time is the most valuable commodity we have, and we don't want to waste time with anyone who isn't going to be supporting us in what we're doing and vice versa, right? Like you don't want to be dead weight to anybody either. So just being clear on like what your expectations are around, relationships, whether it's social, professional, it's always important.
You brought up a good point about clarity and its relationship to purpose. Could you elaborate a little bit more as to how do those two concepts, how are they related to each other?
Absolutely. So purpose is the why, right? So why are we doing certain things? Why do we have people in our lives? Why are we, we have our behaviors? And when it comes to clarity, that's really like the path. And I think of it more as a how, right? So how am I going to engage with this person? How am I going to engage with self, right? Because when we think about relationships, oftentimes we think about relationships with other people, but it's also relationship to self, right? So when I know my purpose and my why, I can be very clear on my day-to-day, my schedule, which really, I feel like sometimes we overlook about like how those small habits, those small daily consistent habits can make a big difference in our lives in a big way. With ourselves and how we interact with other people. So again, when you know your why, you then know your how, like how you're going to move with people, how you're going to move around them. And that's a pretty strong connection.
What are questions a person can ask themselves to check that they're being clear before they even open their mouth? So I see Elon Musk at the event, and I want to go up and talk to him, but I've got 1,000 things going in my head. So when I open my mouth, it comes out as just gibberish. Mm-hmm. What are some questions you can ask yourself before you speak that will help you communicate clearly to the other person?
I am going to heed to my own advice that I'm about to give right now. And I'm going to say one thing. Ask yourself, what is the single most important thing you want this person to remember? That is the most important question to ask yourself. What is the most important thing? What is the key point? You're going to talk about a ton of things, but when you know the one thing that you want Elon Musk or another CEO, executive, influencer in town or around the world to remember about you, you have to remember what is the most important thing you want this person to remember about you or to walk away knowing. And when you think about that one singular thing, you'll be able to communicate that point clearly. And it'll also give you some space to be flexible. Now, don't overwhelm the person, right, with only talk about that thing. Like when they're talking about cats and dogs and you want to talk about apples and bananas, like don't just only talk about apples and bananas, right? Like be flexible in your conversation. But remember the point that you want that person to walk away with. That's the single most important thing.
So in closing, when we're talking about clarity, we're talking about the ability to see our relationships clearly. What do you think is probably the top two biggest takeaways that you would want somebody to take from this?
Top two biggest takeaways is just to remember your ability to communicate clearly is going to open tons of doors for you. So walk away knowing this, that it's funny because this all lines up together. When you know your purpose and you know the reason you're doing something, you know the why, and you can communicate that clearly, it allows you to fall into these other steps, which is, pretty practical things. Speak slowly and clearly, listen. A lot of times when we think about communicating clearly, we think about our output, not what we're bringing in. So make sure you are listening to the other person attentively, because when you listen to them attentively, you are then able to respond in a way that's appropriate and that is in a way that they can understand, and they're going to remember you for that. Because we know lots of folks listen with the intent of responding, not with the purpose of understanding and hearing where that other person is coming from. So, number one thing is to, remember what you want that person to walk away with. Speak slowly and clearly. Listen to them. And when you listen to other people, it will help you with your own clarity.
Perfect. Thank you.